I did move from Germany to the US by myself when I was 19 years old to start this business. There was always this, well, she doesn't know anything, she doesn't have experience, all the things, which is correct. I had no experience. But that just kind of pushed me to just learn so quickly, which also caused to just me, locking myself in a room, and I didn't have friends for 2 years. All I did was just work and be focused. The biggest one is just kind of the age where everyone was like, why are we here?
Julia Kappler, fourth generation, one company, an industry she has quietly made her own. This episode, 4 generations of legacy, one woman rewriting the blueprint. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin End.
And I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by my friend Julia Kappler. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Oh man, guys, this is going to be an exciting show. Julia has a phenomenal history in the world of architecture and innovation. She's got some really steadfast, amazing core beliefs that have built her empire to a global organization. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in an entrepreneurial family and all of the things that really helped her shape her mindset and become this phenomenal entrepreneur that she is today. So make sure to tune in to hear her hot takes on the design industry, architecture, and what it really takes to bring together a company and a design all in one place. All this and more on today's episode. So let's dive in. All right, so Julia, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you're building, and how you've been building it?
Yeah, for sure. I have been building a company here in the US over the past 10 years, started in 2015, and we specialize in design and architecture for, I would say, the entrepreneurs of the healthcare industry, doctors, estheticians, anyone in kind of the health and wellness industry is who we're working with, and we help them build their first, second, third practice from planning to execution.
So let me ask you this, because I know that you have a bit of a heritage to your entrepreneurship journey, right? Your family has this heritage in design. Yeah. How has that really inspired you? Like, what was that like, kind of carrying the torch?
Yeah, I just recently realized where kind of my drive for design comes from, because I've been trying to get to the root of that. And my family has been manufacturing furniture for 7 decades. I'm the 4th generation of that business. And I think kind of growing up in a mindset of just everything was always about how can we make this better? How can we improve it? What does design really mean? That in my childhood, that kind of planted a seed inside me that then kind of made me fall in love with the process. But not until I moved over here and kind of started this, I didn't really understand what I was supposed to do. And I think over the past couple of years, I realized that. But that's where it started when I was younger.
Interesting.
The architecture aspect, so it's usually for the medical industries that are looking to build up their brick and mortar facility. That's essentially what you're focusing on?
Yes. Yeah. Anyone who wants to. Why medical? Why doctors? Why? I mean, would it really be open to anybody? Is it just they usually have the budget, the bigger loan aspects? This is your niche. Like, why medical? Yeah, I would say the simple answer is because the family business in Germany was focused in that industry as well. So that's basically just an expansion of that industry. But also, I believe that you can be really, really, really good at one thing, or you can just be average at a lot of things. So we just are focused on this specific industry to be the best that exists in this industry.
So I'm very familiar with land build outs for like residential. Yeah. So I'm curious on what your whole thing is. Do you actually help them purchase the land, create the actual blueprints, go to the city for approval? Is it like a complete handheld business outline, or are you literally just building out blueprints and then having them do the work? Like, what specifically are you doing?
Yeah. There's 2 different scenarios. Scenario number 1 is they just buy a land and we build something from scratch, or they have a space that they either are renting or purchasing. For both of those, we help them with the blueprint, with the workflow, with the interior design, with getting permits to the city and then get approval to build them. We're not a general contractor, nice. But we plan everything to then have the people build whatever we're planning.
So my grandfather was a residential architect for 25 years. So I actually got to see firsthand. He actually designed our backyard on our first home about 10 years ago, which was really cool. Just kind of understand and work with the progress. I remember asking him one question. He just kind of lit up. And I'm curious on what yours is. For you specifically, what's a project that was like endless budget or whatever the case may be that you were like really excited about to see like the final product, the final outcome?
Yes, that is a project that we're working on currently. It will be finished in, I would say, Q1, Q2 2026. It is this massive,
coming up,
massive 12,000 square feet dental practice that we're building from scratch that has never been seen before in this whole entire country. It will be.
Where's it at?
It's in kind of a smaller town outside of Dallas, Texas.
I had a 1 to 50 shot. So I was like, is it Las Vegas, Nevada? I was like, no, Dallas.
Yeah, no. Dallas. Yeah.
So what makes it so unique and revolutionary, and, you know, had the creative juices flowing for this? Like, why are you so excited?
Yeah.
About this one?
I will say most of the time when you build a medical practice, it's obviously about, okay, this is our practice. We want to treat patients here. But this project kind of turned into just creating a whole different experience where there's not just your treatment rooms and your lab and all the other items that you want, but there's a lot of just, let's call it third spaces, where there's a pond in the backyard. There's an indoor garden inside the space. You walk in and you just have this massive entrance area and you see an indoor garden, and behind that you can walk outside to a little water pond in the back.
Can we take a quick second and say why this is so important? So I go to my dentist office for 6 months, and my wife literally just went to her dentist this morning, and we rant and rave about how awesome our dentist is. And we've never said that. It was almost like, it's our 6-month checkup. We got to go in, get a cleaning. This one, you literally walk in. It's extravagant. It's absolutely beautiful. They get these cool high-end glasses that you can actually wear. So when they put you down, you're actually watching TV up here. They have all the new high-end equipment. Like, you actually just feel like it's a change. It's different. It's new. It's revolutionary. And like, you actually want to refer and bring people back in there. Like, oh, you need a dentist? I have the best dentist you could ever want. So I feel like for something like that, that explains why you should spend the extra money, why you should be creative, is for having repeat customers in business, for everything there. So I love that you guys get to be creative in that. And I think it's going to, you know, pay out tenfold for your actual client as well.
Yeah, it's a very competitive industry. So you have to differentiate yourself in some way. It's no longer just about, oh, who gives me the best treatment. It's everything around it. If you enjoy to go to a place, you're going to come back.
It's an experience.
Yeah.
I believe everything's about an experience. You know, why we do anything is because we want to experience a feeling of something. And a lot of people don't really understand that. And I always find it so silly when companies or businesses or organizations as a whole will cut the customer experience to save a few dollars. It's like, well, they don't need the nicer paint, because realistically, like, who cares? It's just paint. But I truly believe that the experiences is what keeps people coming back for more. So Julia, in your experience, how do you, or what maybe is a better question, what is the philosophy that you hold around why things should be so beautiful? It's not just, obviously there's an experience, but there's not just that, right? Like, what's the depth beneath giving people an experience? Why should we give them such a great experience?
I love that question. My mindset about design is probably the opposite of what we as a collective believe design is. Every time we think about design, we think about aesthetics, beautiful, it looks great. But the actual definition of design is you have a function that is connected with what it looks like. If something is only pretty, but it doesn't work, it doesn't solve a problem, it doesn't have a purpose, that's just art. It's just, we just put something. So my whole entire philosophy is that we all need to do what basically as architects and designers our job is to create something that doesn't just look pretty, but also it has to work. And ultimately, the reason why architecture and design exists is because we as humans want to be in spaces. It used to be shelter. Now, obviously, you know, our whole entire world is buildings and architecture and design, but the human is the center of everything that we build in architecture. So why don't we put the human at the center and assess how spaces affect us as humans, our emotions, our brain, all of that?
I like it. I think that it's a very interesting thing because I have a very good understanding about how people work. And one of the most interesting things is how we actually anchor ourselves to environment. And so one of the things that I wind up diving into with a lot of my clients actually is like, when you're working and people tell me, well, I'm distracted, I'll say, well, where are you trying to work? Well, I work at my desk. Great. But what else do you do at your desk? Oh, I play video games. I fight with my girlfriend. I yell at my employees. And it's like, so your desk is like multifunctional, and the brain and the body get confused while it's there on what it should be doing. And so I started learning, oh, wow, like our body actually heavily responds to environmental cues. So I'm so curious, how do you ensure that the environmental cues really start dictating what people are supposed to get out of the environment? Like, how meticulous is that planning? Do you kind of know just because of the fact that you've been building in this industry, or is it super dependent on the individual facility? Like, what really goes into that?
I will say there's two aspects. There's one, certain areas where we just have to understand what the day-to-day looks like in order to just set it up in a way where the space works for you and not against you. What the doctor needs, what the assistant need, we need to understand that. That is obviously very meticulous, depends on the specific practice. But then you also just have general human nature needs, and that is all of our senses as humans. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we smell? All of that. You don't have to understand anything about the medical industry. But if I walk into a dental office and the very first thing that I hear is a drill or a suction, might not be the best experience, when instead I could just, there's some soft music playing in the background. There's a person sitting that just smiles at me. Maybe there's a very good scent in the air. It immediately just puts your body at ease, as opposed to the other scenario where it's loud, people talking. Maybe it smells like a dental office. Your body will respond very differently.
Yep.
I want to play on that mindset here of what you just said, because I feel like that in today's day and age is the biggest advantage that you have. I'm going to make this big comparison here. I'm going to talk about something very controversial that I'm very interested into your opinion of what you just did as a human was walking in, giving your experience, and essentially listing out some improvements that you would automatically make or that you would want to see. So this morning, I was talking to my mother-in-law, and she had to make a return to Walmart. And Walmart, a global conglomerate, cut out their customer service, transitioned to AI. She loved it. She was 68 years old. She was on the phone for 4 minutes, and I let her talk to me about it. I said, really? She's like, I was able to get my order number. I was able to get exactly what I need. I didn't have to talk to somebody overseas. I didn't have to, fight for over an hour and how I didn't have my receipt. 4 minutes. Talk to somebody. Or got my AI, got my order number, went back to Walmart, ran and raved about how amazing the process was for AI, and was able to make my return. So what does that leave humans about the bad taste that they have in their mouth? Now, graphic design, all of our industries, graphic design, architecture, how we've transitioned over the last 30 years was drawing and writing on paper to utilizing technology, whether it's iPad or now 3D models. What makes you, with keeping what you just said in mind, or maybe it's something different, what makes you a necessity with how AI is able to create blueprints like that, or I'm able to make transitions and changes like that? Why do I hire your company?
Yeah. First off, I love technology and I love AI because I believe that if we utilize it in the right way, that it actually makes our work
Have
just
to.
faster, quicker, easier. We can just be
I
so
love
much
that
better
mindset.
at what we do, right? I don't see it as a
Amen.
replacement. I see it as, oh, this actually helps us to be better.
Beautiful
I
mindset.
would say that one of the things that is not really possible to do and by just programming something is kind of exactly what I explained to you, that I as a human, I
Yeah.
have all these different senses. I can walk into a space and I can assess with all of those different senses that technology can't do.
Yeah.
They can't smell.
Yeah. I triggered that exact same thing. And I said, and I haven't been able to trigger that and correlate that to until you just said that. I'm like, that's it right there. You, it doesn't matter of technology expanding in the last 5 years, you having the experience of walking in and saying, this layout that AI has designed and enhanced still doesn't make sense. And these are the reasons why. I love that. I wasn't able, thank you for that. It just like a light bulb triggered in my brain, just made that connection. And thank you.
Yeah.
So, Julia, I'm curious because I love, as you could probably tell, I love getting into the person a little bit more. You have a very interesting ethos, leadership principle about yourself and the way you carry yourself and how you're interacting with life. I'm curious, a big thing that I've seen that you really encourage is you dare people to challenge the status quo. And you do that in your own firm, but what does that really mean to you? Like, why is that so important for you as a leader and an individual?
That is a very great question. I don't really know why that is something just inside me where I can't just accept the bare minimum or just the mediocre. There's always this, how can something be better? I don't know where it's coming from. I believe that it is kind of how I was raised. I think that my father has the same mindset where it was just always about that. But I also just am a big believer in just the capabilities of us as humans. And I love seeing other people just achieve and accomplish things in life that they could have never even imagined. So maybe it's that, just pushing the buttons to just get people to just accomplish things that maybe they never even dared to believe was possible.
I think that that's really great because a lot of people tend to die with their own limitations without ever knowing if they could have done more. Does that ethos, that view of life, and I'm transitioning this slightly, but is that what kind of led you into co-founding Devoke, which for those of you that don't know, it is an anti-fashion week movement focused on, positioning, what do you call it? Positioning America, the world, and showing like, hey, less overconsumption, promoting the mindful designs. I'm curious, is that what's sparked that desire to create that, that avenue as well?
Yeah, so Devoke is a sustainable fashion brand in itself. And actually, my mom is the designer. She custom makes everything. She's just this
Love it.
exceptional
Cool.
human being where I have no idea how she just makes something from nothing and just all of a sudden there's a bag.
Did she make that shirt, by the way? That shirt is phenomenal.
Thank you. It
Never
is
seen
not
anything
from
like
her. Maybe I should have worn something so I can,
Yeah.
it. It's really cool. Very
Gotta
unique.
represent your brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, very unique.
But Anti-Fashion Week is something that I then co-founded with one of my really good friends who she's worked in the fashion industry for years. She lived in New York. She was, in the middle of all the craziness. And we together both had that collective mindset that we just wanted to create something that removes a lot of the I would say the negative things of what the fashion industry is, and really create a platform for people that maybe would never be able to be on the big stages, the independent designers, and just again finding the people that do exceptional work, but maybe they don't have the money or the network to go to where they deserve to be. So we wanted to create
Mm.
something to just give those people a platform.
I love it, mostly because I can't stand Fashion Week. The traffic here is horrible. Everything is cluttered. This place sucks during Fashion Week. I'm anti-Fashion Week for my own reasons.
There you go.
I am very curious though. I want to kind of shift here. As I'm so interested in your company at this point. We could say it's somewhat global, right? There's multiple locations in different countries. What does it really take? Because we get a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this, and I myself work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of these guys and gals are struggling to delegate to their teams in one location, let alone having multiple locations across the world. Can we get into that a little bit? Because that's phenomenal. What does that take to lead multi teams across countries?
I will say that it's a process that everyone has to kind of go through. You don't just wake up and all of a sudden, I'm not a special person where I'm just good at it. It's a process where even for myself, whenever I opened the second location, it was Charlotte, then it was New York. The process I had to go through, I don't have kids, but just imagine that you have your child with you and then one day they like move away and then you just have to still kind of figure out how to stay connected. Where to me, it was this process of not how do I delegate, but how do I let go? That to me was the hardest part, where all of a sudden you just have to step into a very different role and just let go and then trust the systems that you have implemented and that it will work.
So what would you say is that main difference between delegation and letting go? How does one know when they're ready to do one or the other, or when they should do one or the other?
I think one is an action and one is mindset. I think delegating is the thing that you do, but letting go is what you have to do in your mind in order to stay sane while you're doing it.
That's an interesting one. I can't say that a lot of people even understand that, which is why it's so good to point it out. So let me ask you this part. Now, what was the biggest problem that you wound up encountering in the expansion process as you're learning to let go? And then I'm curious too, because again, I see this a lot. Something happens and all of a sudden the entrepreneur is like re-triggered. It's like, oh my God, I knew it. I should have just done it myself. And then they get right back into the crap. So like, what was that big problem and how did you overcome it?
I honestly think mine was kind of that mindset shift where I had to just step into just that different role where you are not involved in everything. You don't see everything. You just have people that execute the work and you'll just hear about the problems. So I think kind of just restructuring myself and just trusting that everything is fine without me having to know about everything. But then at the same time, there's also just this level of I have this approach where I just throw everyone into the cold water because I think that military approach works really well. You just let them go and then you assess, find the blind spots, find the problems. And then from there, okay, this is what we have to adjust. I generally think everything in life is all about your mindset. If you don't have that right, then nothing else what you do actually matters.
And how many locations do you guys currently have?
There's 2 in the US. We just recently opened in Canada. And then obviously there's the connection to Germany still, where in Germany we have 3 different locations.
And you're also co-founding and working on these other businesses.
Yes. When I don't sleep, you know.
I love it.
I'm curious. What is your why? What drives you? Because clearly this was a generational business, right? I don't know if you're passionate about this. It seems like your side businesses you are, but what's your why?
To answer your question, if I'm passionate about this, I never intended to be part of my family's business at all. I always loved design. So, right after I graduated high school, I decided to go to school for architecture and design. That's what I wanted to do. I always loved it. Just kind of happened that I had the opportunity to come over here and kind of build something not for myself, but kind of by myself as well. And in the beginning, it was just all about me being young and me just wanting to prove everyone that I can do this. But then ultimately now I truly, truly believe that the reason why I've always loved design, always loved architecture, the reason why I love psychology is what I'm now doing with Kappler, which is changing the healthcare industry and just changing the way that we build practices to ultimately create better work environments for the doctors, but then also the patients.
So you've been doing this for a while though, and it seems like the pinnacle is just around the corner. So now it's like, what then? So what are the aspirations and goals here, after this Q1, Q2 build is finished?
Oh, we're going to continue to build and grow. Right now, we have locations in North Carolina and New York. Then maybe after that, it's going to be Florida, California, Texas. I want us to be the company in this industry. I want everyone to know us. And I want us to continue to revolutionize it to just become better and set new standards.
Stay away from California. It's the politics, the things that are coming on over there, that is not favorable for business owners right there. But I love the growth mindset here.
Yeah.
So I don't usually ask about the actual personal questions, but I'm very interested because you have a graphic design and fashion background. This is going to sound weird. What do you like to do for fun? I've never, ever asked this question, but I feel like you're such a unique person. I'm very interested in your answer.
Yeah. My absolute favorite thing to do in the world is boxing.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be something so unique. Boxing. I never would have guessed that too.
I know.
Like kickboxing or boxing?
Regular boxing, yeah.
I knew it was going to be something interesting like that.
Man, I struggled transitioning from kickboxing to boxing. It was so difficult. They kept on being like, your footing is off. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm just ready to kick you in the face. And he's like, well, that's not how we box. I'm like, I know.
Yeah, it was very different. I tried kickboxing, but I kept hurting my feet. Then I was like, okay, let's just keep it up here.
So
how did you get introduced to that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to go into.
You know, I've thought about a lot of these things. And again, I remember even when I was younger, when I still lived in Germany, I always wanted to kind of get into the martial arts. I used to dance. Like I used to do ballet, then I did competitive hip hop dancing, then ended up with boxing, which my mom was very confused about that. But I always kind of wanted to do it and then never really found the right environment where I felt welcome. You know, I'm a girl, I'm short, all the things. No one really wanted to train me. And then I moved to the US, to Charlotte, and found this boxing club. I took a class, loved it. That was 7-8 years ago. I never stopped.
I'm curious. You know, we talked a little bit about one of the difficult things you had to overcome in business. What were one of the more difficult things you had to overcome in life to become the woman that you are today?
I will say for myself, I did move from Germany to the US by myself when I was 19 years old to start this business.
Wow.
So I guess there's just a couple of things that weren't normal, and one of them being my age, where obviously you look at me, I look like a teenager because I was one, where there was always this, well, she doesn't know anything, she doesn't have experience, all the things, which is correct. I had no experience. Yeah. But that just kind of pushed me to just learn so quickly, which also caused to just me, locking myself in a room, and I didn't have friends for 2 years when I first moved over here because all I did was just work and be focused. But I think it just There's a lot of things, but I would say the biggest one is just kind of the age where everyone was like, why are you here?
I love it. And I'm curious too, like in doing that, did you wind up having, I know you said you didn't have any friends or anything, but did you wind up having any mentors or people that you learned from? And if so, what was one of the best pieces of advice you received along the way?
I will honestly say that the biggest mentor in my life is still my dad. We're very different in the way that we think and the way that we approach things, but I've learned so much from him, certain things that I am now doing and certain things that taught me how I don't want to do things. And one of the biggest pieces was that he's this big visionary, and I was always raised to believe that you can achieve whatever you want in life. And that is just that mindset that keeps me going and pushing. So I would say, yeah, it's still him.
I have one other question for you that kind of ties in on this topic. As a father who aspires to have a daughter that grows up with your mindset and your determination, what would you say is one of the best things that you did or experienced with your dad that helped you be so close and so open to learning from him? Because whatever that is, you tell me that advice, I'm going to start implementing it yesterday.
I'm not even sure, because growing up, my dad would travel a lot. So we really wouldn't spend a lot of time with one another. Maybe we need to ask him this question. What did you do?
Yeah, call him up right now.
Call him in. Yeah. I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure because, yeah, we used to fight a lot and all of the things, and we're both stubborn. I don't know. I think maybe he knows. I don't.
Well, I guess it'll just have to be one of the greater kept secrets of the Kappler family.
Yeah, I wish I knew, but I also don't want to just come up with something that sounds cool.
No, don't, because then you'll give me horrible advice, and when me and my daughter aren't close, I'm going to blame you. So don't do that.
Yeah. Actually, there's actually one thing that he once said, which is you have to allow like your kids to think for themselves, and you have to also trust them at one point. So I think once we were kind of stepping over that, okay, I'm learning from you, but now maybe me as a daughter, I can also teach you some things, where I believe that his mindset of, I also trust you and I trust your decisions, and I understand that you are not me and you will make different choices, that made us closer in our relationship, but also B, that made me feel more comfortable and, confident in making those decisions, because I knew that he has my back.
Beautiful.
So I feel like you, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you came to the States to start this business and you were working on yourself and the business since 19. Not a lot of people get that type of opportunity. Have you had a W-2, and can you walk me through usually for people who have a W-2, especially early on, that's their safety net. They come back and they're like, I can always get a job. If this fails, if I step into entrepreneurship, if I step into business ownership, I know that if I fail, I can always get a job, right? And pay a salary. Have you ever had a W-2 or a regular crappy job of waiting tables, hosting things, or whatever the case may be? And if not, that's fine. I want to know your mindset on like how you were able to just keep going forward. Like, was it just the comfortability of like, if things don't work out, I can go do something else? Like, can you walk me through a little bit of this? I think that'd really help our audience out.
Yeah. I've never had your general 9-to-5 job, primarily because I was so young. So I was in college, and then that kind of happened. The only thing I've ever done is I was babysitting like children. That's the only thing I've ever done. But I believe that, one, you always worry, right? They're like always in business, like, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? There's always this feeling of like, I cannot fail. In the beginning, it was for myself. Now it's to feed all the families that work for us. But I think that one of the kind of mindset shifts that helped me to just never get to a point where that made me feel just very bad or made me feel very down is that I just kept reminding myself, if I was able to do this, I could just do it again.
I don't think Vin and I's kids, Vin has, a daughter who's, and he has another one on the way actually. And I have two kids that are 4 and 2. When they get to an age of 18, they'll never have a normal job. There's just no way with how fast technology is advancing.
Yeah.
So my goal is to teach my kids entrepreneurship as early as I can, right? Opening up lemonade stands, hopefully washing my cars every weekend so they can establish that work ethic.
That's why they should wash cars every weekend.
I really, because you're the first person I think that we've talked to that kind of has never had an actual job, and look how it's turned out. Like, it wasn't a sense of entitlement. Like, it was like, I have something to prove to other people. Then it was, I have something to prove to myself. And now it's, I cannot fail. Like, it's just this hierarchy of success mindset that is phenomenal. So I wish I had a follow-up question here, because I love where you're at mentally right now.
Yeah, I can add something if you don't have.
Please.
I also think it's important to remember that I grew up in a family of like 3 generations before me, that they all grew up in this mindset of, well, this is the company. It was always around me. And even growing up, I think every weekend or on the summer holidays, we will always work in the company. So I was always surrounded by business and just this mindset where I don't even know what a family looks like where you have a regular 9-to-5 jobs, because it never existed in mine. I think that obviously also plays a big role to just be surrounded by that.
I think that, and I thank you for sharing that. But to go the other way, we've talked to other people who've had exactly what you've had, and they don't need to work. They've had entitlement. They feel like they're set. So why do I need to do anything when I have this? When I have all of these luxuries to prove, I don't need to do anything. My family has set me up. But you went like, and I think that's where I want to go into too. Because that's very important for me and my family, for my position, is what did your dad, what did your family, whatever the case may be, what did they put you through teenage years to establish this mindset that you have here?
Yeah.
Like, what did you do?
Yeah, I definitely think that we were always reminded why we have the life that we have. It's not just there. It's because my parents and then my grandparents and my great-grandparents did all of these things because they decided to just, risk a lot of things where, what if this doesn't work? We don't know. We were always reminded the reason why we have this is because we do this. And I don't think that my parents would have ever allowed us to just sit in comfort and look, oh, well, you guys do this, so we're just here. Whatever money they have made is not my money, it's my parents. So I want to build something that I can be proud of, obviously continuing a legacy. But yeah, I think we all need to just create something that we have put the work in and it wasn't entirely given to us.
That's important. I think, and to any of the entrepreneurial parents listening, because I know that there's a bunch of us out there now, but I think one of the biggest things, and I work very consciously to include this, is I like to get my daughter involved right now. She's 3, but I like to get her involved as much as possible. So like, if I'm not doing something that's like client facing, where I'm on a very important, client call, or even doing like the podcast like this, if I'm not doing one of those 2 things, I'll let her hang out in my office while I work. Like, she sat in on meetings that I've had about like real estate deals or like when I'm doing budgeting. And I think that the ability to gain exposure, it creates a norm. And so even for her, she's just going to be used to like, oh, entrepreneurship's a thing, right? Dad would build a business, mom was building the home, and like, that's how she's going to normalize life. So I love that because it's 100%, the truth about how it's you being able to absorb from your environment to manifest what you're currently doing. Like, it's just been instilled in you, and I love that.
Yeah, I remember even when I was younger, we would go on vacation and then randomly, oh, there's a meeting, and we would just sit in the car and wait for 3 hours because Dad has to have a meeting. So I think it's just, you know, that's just how it is.
Love it. I love it. So, Julia, this has been a awesome episode. I got a few quick questions for you before we start wrapping up here. One of them being this, and I feel like it's going to be a great answer, but one of the questions being, you know, our podcast is the 1% podcast because we believe that there is always a 1% version of life in all avenues of it. And what we're really curious about is knowing that you don't have to be a billionaire to be a 1%er. You just have to be setting yourself apart from the rest of society, which you clearly are. And so our question is, what is your specific version of living a 1% life, a life different than the rest of the world? And I think you've been dropping it kind of throughout this episode, but what would you say if you tied a big bow on it? How does that look for you?
I would think that primarily it is just building a life that doesn't fit in any of the boxes that society has created for us, because if we do that, we can never be the 1%. So for me, it's just truly whatever you truly and genuinely believe is what you need to do in this life, go do it, and you don't have to follow the rules. Create your own, change the rules. That's how we become that 1% and live that 1% life that no one else does.
I love it. And then for anybody who might be wondering, how can they get a little bit more into your ecosystem? Where can they maybe sign up to work with your company? How could they get connected to you on socials or in general? Like, what do you got for our people? What can they do to be more around you?
Yes. Very easy to connect with me is everything is connected to my name. So if you look up Julia Kappler on any platform, I will pop up. And the same thing for the company. It's Kappler Group, also on every platform from YouTube to LinkedIn to a website. Very simple and very easy.
That's it. She said, Google me. That's how powerful she knows her name and brand is.
Yes, I didn't realize that that's what it is. But honestly, yes, just type in my name and see what happens.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, Julia, stick around for a minute after this. We got another thing to talk to you about. But thanks so much for being on today, sharing so much amazing wisdom. And I'm sure our listeners loved it just as much as we did. Guys, there you have it. Stick around for another episode of the 1% podcast. Don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you thought of today's episode and any of the cool insights that you've had. Until next time, I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
that was Julia. See you, everybody.
Bye, guys.